All right, thank you, Marty. Well, in some polls, former Arkansas governor and presidential candidate Mike Huckabee is leading in the choice to take on President Obama in 2012. And right on cue, he's got a new book out. Focuses largely on policy and good governance. It's called A Simple Government. And Governor Huckabee joins us live to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning, Evan. Great to be with you today.
An interview with you recently, and you said something that I really appreciated, and I think a lot of voters do. You said, you know, when you think about whether you're going to run for president, you're not somebody who feels like the country must have you or no one else. You know, you don't have this outsized ego about it must be Mike Huckabee or no one. Tell me a little bit about that as it weighs into whether or not you will run.
You know, Evan, I think a lot of people misread that and they thought that I was saying, well, I'm not interested. Well, of course I'm interested, but only 44 people have been president of the United States in almost 240 years. The fact is, we're a nation of 310 million people. I'm not such a megalomaniac that I think that I'm the only person in the whole United States of America capable of doing this job. I mean, after all, the job is that of a public servant, not a public prince. And one of the things we've got to do is to face reality. There is no such thing as a person who gets elected who is a perfect president. All of us have our flaws, our mistakes. Hopefully we would rise to the level of leadership. And one of the things I try to do in this book is to say, look, here's some things I believe, that I stand for, that I would do, that I think this country ought to do. Doesn't mean that my ideas are the only ones out there.
Yeah.
And I just think I would never want to vote for someone, ever, who thought he was the only person in all the world who could do the job. That frankly kind of scares me, that somebody has that big of an ego.
You have been candid also about the fact that you weren't a big fan of the presidential election process in terms of similar questions at debates, short answer formats, etc. And so a simple government seems to be a chance for you to have a little more depth and talk policy. Is this a campaign manifesto?
You know, one of the things, Evan, that really was frustrating is that we went through 11 debates in the Republican primary. We never got one question on education. We only got one on health care, which turned out to be the biggest issue in all of 2010 in this president's administration. We talked about Iraq over and over and over again, and there really wasn't a dime's worth of difference between the Republican candidates,
right,
with the exception of the contrarian Ron Paul. And I just think that by writing a book like this, I'm able to say, if I was on the debate stage by myself for a couple of hours or more, and you wanted to know what I stood for, this gives you a chance to understand it. Well, I think it's just a better forum for me than being one of 12 guys elbowing my way for 2 or 3 minutes out of an hour and a half every 6 to 8 weeks.
The book is called A Simple Government. It's out now. We're going to talk about education in just a second. I want to read a quote from the book in which you talk about America's role in the world, because we are seeing, obviously, such a tenuous situation in Africa and the Middle East, and there's a lot of questions about America's role. And you talk about President Obama, and if we could, I would like to quote from your book. You say, according to President Obama, America hasn't achieved and doesn't stand for anything special. Tell me more about your thoughts on that.
I'm a strong believer, Evan, in American exceptionalism. I don't think we're just one of a bunch of nations and we're just an also-ran. I think that we have a special place on this earth from our very founding. We are a nation that never should have existed. It is a miracle we're here. A bunch of farmers with ragtag armies grabbing muskets off the wall, better suited for hunting rabbits than fighting off the British Army. And yet here we stand as the greatest nation in the history of the world, largely because we value the individual. We value freedom. We cherish democracy and the idea that we have a participatory government. That makes us unique. And now we're seeing across the world people who yearn, and they're taking to the streets, putting their lives at risk, just as our founders did, in order that they may experience that sense of individualism and personal worth. So I think that it's important that we, rather than downplay our heritage, we need to lift it up and tell every American kid, you're blessed to be in this country, and you owe something back to a country that's given you something that other people in the world are dying to get.
Now, you were talking about the president from a speech from 2009 where you say he says we don't stand for anything special, but I want to quote from that exact same speech because you left this out of your book. This is President Obama in the same speech. He said, quote, "We have a core set of values that are enshrined in our Constitution and our body of law and our democratic practices and our belief in free speech and equality that, though imperfect, are exceptional. America has a continued extraordinary role in leading the world towards peace and prosperity." Don't you see why people get a little annoyed? They see you leave that out of there, and it kind of contradicts what you say about what the president's view is, doesn't it?
Well, Evan, I'm referring to the fact that when he spoke in Europe, he said America is an exceptional country, but so the Greeks think they're an exceptional country, and the Brits think they're an exceptional country. And he downplayed the idea that American exceptionalism doesn't just mean, and by the way, this is not some conservative viewpoint alone. No less than Richard Dreyfuss, who is hardly a conservative. Richard is way out there on the left. Richard Dreyfuss has been one of the most outspoken voices in saying that Americans do not appreciate just what a special nation this is. Now, Richard may approach it differently. He may look at it as more of a secular answer. Frankly, I may look at it as that it's providential that we are who we are. But the fact is, we both, from the left and from the right, come to the conclusion, more emphatically than the president, that America is not just one of many exceptional nations. It is unique in its place in the world and in its place in history.
Governor, I got about a minute left with you. You write so much about education here. You've been a governor. We're seeing Mr. Walker in Wisconsin. We've seen Chris Christie in New Jersey battling unions. Do you think they're doing the right thing?
Well, I think they're doing what they have to do to get their budgets balanced. There's no way that states can continue to be on the hook for the extraordinary expenses. Public employees make 30% more in wages than their private sector counterparts and 70% more in benefits. And it's the benefit package that the governor of Wisconsin and other governors are trying to get under control. It's simply unsustainable. When $1 is put in by the teacher in Wisconsin and $57 matches it, that is a pension plan unlike any other in the country. I don't think they want to make it so that teachers don't get paid well. I want teachers to make a lot of money. I really do. But I want it to be realistic, and I want the people whose kids are in school to be able to afford it. And I think that's what they're looking at, is a solution that everybody can live with, where teachers are paid well to teach, but they may not be paid extraordinarily to retire.
The book's called A Simple Government. Whether you're running for president or not, I think a lot of people learn a lot more from it, and I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. That's
Governor Mike Huckabee. And again, the book is out now, 12 Things We Really Need from Washington and a Trillion That We Don't. And it's I've gone through the book. It's very pithy. I mean, this is not sort of a quick puff book that sometimes you see from politicians. There's a lot of thought, and he tried to put a lot of substance into this book.
Have you seen his show at all?
I have.
Fox News channel?
I have.
I have occasionally from time. I just see segments. Interesting.
He's a very interesting guy, and we'll see soon if he's going to get in the race. But if he does, he will instantly have name recognition and will be one of the leading candidates if he's in.
Yeah, interesting to see these candidates who have had their own show, whether it be a talk show, a reality show, what have you. I wonder how that will play into a campaign. This is sort of the first time we're kind of seeing something like that. So
yep.
Something to watch.